Okay, guys, I want to tell you the story that is not written down, but it's known to a certain region in Cuba. I was told this story by a scientist that he's still working, and this guy's he's a scientist. He's really smart. So one day we're sitting at an event. I think it was a wedding or something, and we're sitting at the table and we started chatting back and forth. And he tells me this story that I've never heard before. So it goes like this: in the in the 16th century, around the 1600s, there were three ships, I think, three ships full of gold from the Americas, uh, from Mexico and Peru. They were taking all these items from the Aztecs and the Inca. And the Inca had, I know that the Aztecs are very famous, but the Inca had a lot more gold, a lot more gold. And they had a lot of silver, tons. In fact, the mine that they were working in Peru, that the Spanish got the Indians to work those mines at a point of a sword, very diplomatic, that mine's still being worked. And I heard tell that if you take all the silver that has been taken from that mine for hundreds of years, you can probably build a bridge across the ocean out of silver. But anyways, go back to the story. They were taking this gold from these regions, taking it to Panama, and from Panama they would travel to Havana, where they would melt it into bricks, gold bullions they call it, and then it'll be neatly stacked in the ships and go back to Spain and surrender the gold to the king and queen. They would take a percentage. So these ships, I think there were three, maybe four, I'm not sure, but they were on the way back. And once they crossed the isthmus between the space between the Yucatan and the western tip of Cuba, there were some pirates waiting for them, just kind of like drifting around, waiting for the ships to arrive. Apparently, they knew they were coming. Um, they probably figured out the timetable and they say, okay, every month at this date, between this time and this time, this ships will come by. So the pirates were waiting. So now the Spanish couldn't turn around. So what happened was that one ship that was loaded turned around and went towards the coast, while the other two or three battled it out with the pirates. You know, cannons and whatever they were using, swords, whatever. The ship was loaded with gold, and they had a quote unquote life size cross from Christ. You know, the cross from Christ, life size, which I'm thinking it could be 12 feet, 10 to 12 feet, maybe a little higher. I'm not too sure. And this is made out of solid gold, 4x4, and they already had this thing on a platform, you know, standing and everything. They had it tied so it wouldn't rock and anything. So they traveled to the coast with two priests, and they couldn't unload this cross because it was very very heavy. They needed the pulleys from the ship, and then you couldn't. There was no docking or anything. So what they did is they took their bearings and they probably said, okay, from that rock to that massive tree or whatever they found on the coast, and they untied the cross and they pushed it over and they kind of mark the spot by looking at the coast and trying to figure out where it meets, and very crude way of marking the area, but they had to get it away from the pirates. So then they got to the closer to the coast, and they uh, unloaded onto rowboats, um, chest full of gold and coins. They already had some coins made. So the two priests went ashore, unloaded everything with the help of the Spanish sailors, and then the Spanish sailors, they carried the stuff and they took into they found a cave nearby, and they took into this cave, deep into this cave, and they put it in there. Cuba, the topography of Cuba, or the geology of Cuba, is like a sponge. It's got caves everywhere, all over the place. In fact, there's a cave that they found by mistake, by coincidence, and it was for miles. Some other people. Anyways, going back to the story. So they unloaded this stuff, put it in the cave, and then the priest stayed behind. The other people got on board the boats, went back to the ship. The ship turned around and went back to help the other ships that were fighting the pirates. By the way, they lost. The pirates took those ships. I don't know how many there were, but they took them. So, because I have an idea why the big galleons, it's like a container ship. They're not too maneuverable. In the meantime, the pirates have schooners. They would just go around them and cannon, fire cannon, fire cannon, fire. And the big galleons are kind of, very slow and very, they're good carrier. They're good. It's like a container ship. You can load a lot of cargo on a galleon, but they weren't. They were made for the kind of fighting. Anyways, the so the priest went on two different directions to ask for help and get this gold, safely in the city, Havana. So one priest never makes it. Mm, That was the end of that. Nobody knew where he was. Nobody found anything. The other priest crawled into the small town, and he made a little map on a piece of leather where the treasure was at this cave, and probably including where the cross was, mentioning that spot in the ocean. So, but he was really beat to hell. He was tired. He went through this mangrove jungle, which is impossible to go through. I mean, you got roots after vines and all kinds of. He went through this jungle, and by the time he got to that small town, he was half dead. So he gave this little piece of leather map to the priest in charge of this little chapel, this little church in this particular town, and the priest had a little stashed away, that a place that you can pull this rock and pull the map in there and cap it again, put the rock back in there, and keep it there safely. Well, the priest that showed up with the map, he died like 4 days later, and the priest from the church, either he forgot about it or he didn't know what to do because there was nobody around. This is a little town in the middle of nowhere. To get to Havana, the main authorities, you have to go through another bunch of jungles and stuff like that. Anyways, so that got lost in history, that map in that church. 300 years later, here comes the Cuban Revolution, 1910. I think it lasted 10 years against the Spanish. Here comes General Antonio Maceo. Very tall guy, very handsome guy, strong mulatto. They called him the bronze giant or something like that. And he was very fierce. He was a good warrior. He was a good fighter, and he was a general. So he went in there with some troops trying to recruit men to fight the Spanish. Now, this town was pro Spanish. They didn't want nothing to do with the revolution against the Spanish. And they said, no, we're not going to help you. Well, the bronze, not giant, I remember now, is the bronze Titans. Well, the bronze Titan lost his temper, which he was famous for. He really got pissed and he burnt the whole place down, including the church. He said, you're not going to help me fight against the Spanish. You don't deserve to live. And he just rampaged through the town and just burned everything down, including the map and the church. I don't know how stone burned, but apparently it did. So then here comes 19. Now remember, it was 1700, 1600s, 1900, and now here comes 1948, modern times. 3 or 4 men, they were up through the mountains looking for minerals. I think they were looking for. There was a custom to look for charcoal. There was some charcoal deposits, and they would bag it and sell it, and then use it also. And they were looking for stuff like that. It started to rain like hell, which it does in the Caribbean, and they found the cave where the gold was, and they went in to get out from the rain. And they went deep in the cave, and bingo, they see this chest. They open it up, loaded with money, with coins and gold shields and plates and all kinds of different things, earrings. So they were going, hey, they were celebrating, and we're rich. So they said, okay, tomorrow, let's go down to the town and see if we can borrow a pickup, because they didn't have, nobody there had a vehicle. So they decided to stay overnight and sleep during the storm. And the next day, when they got up, one of the guys said, hey, who was the joker last night? He said, well, what do you mean? He goes, yeah, one of you guys were joking around, take it all or take nothing, that kind of thing. And he says, well, I don't know what you're talking about. I was asleep. I was dead tired. He goes, yeah, you guys came up with this, if you don't take it all, you can't take nothing. So everybody grabbed a handful of coins and put them in their pockets so they can show it when they went back to town. So he went to the town, went to his house, and told his wife, look, we found this chest and it's got gold, and look at these other coins. So then they went and got it. They borrowed a pickup from somebody, probably didn't tell him what it was for. And they went up to the mountain to retrieve the chest. On the way up there, the truck, we're talking Model T type of truck. You got a crank in that thing, crank the front, with the bed stakes in the back. You've probably seen them, old truck. So the truck loses its brakes, and the road was very curvy. They go off the road, down a cliff. Everybody but dies. Everybody gets killed. Nobody knew. No, they didn't tell what this gold was. They just showed the wives a few coins. So that secret is also dead. Okay. Now here comes 1960. 63, 64. I'm not remember about this day because there's a big gap in between there, but it's modern times. uh Fidel hears about this legend, greedy bastard. He sends man in the mountains, find that cave. They did find the cave. They retrieved all the gold, and he probably shipped it to Switzerland because Fidel doesn't spend a dime in his own country. he is taking that, he's using that island like he's already dead, but he was using that island like his own private ranch, and everything that island produces was sold for his benefit. There's no construction of new hospitals. There's no construction of new roads or maintaining the infrastructure. There's, nothing. All the money to his account, him and his brother, Raul. So then in the 90s, 96, when Russia lost the Cold War and communism collapsed, Russia was sending millions of dollars a day to Cuba. I started at 9, it was around 30 by the time, something like that, daily. And Russia said, "Hey, we can't send you any more money because we're broke." The economy in Russia was collapsing, and everything was upside down, and there was nobody really in charge. It's a big mess. The military was selling stuff under the table, military equipment, so they can get some money, guns and whatever. So Fidel said, "Okay, we need money, and we need it quickly." So he sent a crew of guys, of investigators, send them to Spain to go to that archive of the Antilles and read about all these ships that they were coming and going, where they got sunk by the hurricanes and stuff. So he found, or they found, an area where there was a few ships sunken. And I saw an article in the papers, you can probably still look it up, that you can see the picture was taken in the water. So you can see, in the water in Cuba is very clear. So you can see the bottom of the ocean, of the sea there, and you see a pile of gold, of different things. They weren't the breaks or anything. This is the gold that was coming from Mexico, didn't make it to Havana, and it sunk. And probably also from the pirates that they couldn't retrieve the gold on time, the ship sunk also. Things like that happened. So there was a comment by a diver when he came up. They said, "Okay, did you find anything?" He goes, "There's a pile of stuff down there. There's a pile of gold, because gold is very heavy. Gold is not going to be shifting around unless you get a hurricane. But if you have a tidal movement and stuff like that, it's not moving. It's not going nowhere." And so they retrieved millions and millions of dollars of gold. And he kept it quiet because the Spanish, they want the stuff back. They're saying that's ours. We took it, and it's ours. So he probably kept it quiet so he didn't have to defend himself in national court, which he doesn't care. He's not going to obey any national court, international court. Not going to do that. He's a son of a bitch. Even after that, he's still a son of a bitch. So and then that money, Switzerland. If you didn't know this, Fidel, and you're not going to hear this in the American news because they don't mention this stuff. Either they don't care, or they don't want to. The socialists don't want to be embarrassed. Fidel was the fourth richest man in the world for a bunch of years. The fourth richest man of the world. So how do you think he did that? It wasn't by working hard. It was from working, from us, the population, working hard. Where he had a speech that he would say, "We will work hard and eat well." I swear to God, people didn't notice the hand gestures, but I did. We will work hard, so we will point to the population, and then we were. He didn't say eat well. He would say we will profit from the sacrifice. Very heroic, kind of thing. So yeah. Now, I did some research. I read the whole story of Cuba, from the start, from the Taínos to now. And it turns out that there are 500 galleons sunken around the island, and 99 of them are in the harbor. There's a lot of crap down there that um, that it should be recovered, but it's pretty difficult. And Fidel had wanted to do an agreement with the French to go down there with submarines or some sort of equipment and recover all this stuff, and they would go a percentage. I don't know if it was half and half or 30 for you, 60 for me, something like that, 70 or whatever it was. It's probably more for him, obviously. So there's a lot of stuff there. So there's a lot of galleons sunken around the island. When I say around, I don't mean completely around. There was no reason to go to the east side. It was mostly towards the west. Okay. So that's another story that is not written down. Okay, guys, I have another story for you.